Hi, Blake. Welcome to On the House. Great to have you here. In today's episode, we're going to be diving into Blake's 18 lessons from 18 months as Senior Vice President of Marketing at Digioh, which was originally shared in Blake's newsletter. And we're going to provide a link to that in the description. But before we jump into the lessons, can you please start by sharing a bit about your journey, Blake, and how you ended up at Digioh?
Yeah, for sure, Joseph. It's a pleasure to be here. Stoked to chat with you today. So I'm Blake Imperl, the SVP of Marketing at Digioh, as you mentioned. I have a little bit of an unconventional path to getting to SaaS marketing and leadership within that as well. I started as an end user of tools like Digioh. I was an email and SMS marketer for direct-to-consumer brands. Never thought I would come over to SaaS. I loved email and SMS marketing and really some of the more direct response kind of copywriting and things like that. And started to get just an immense interest in education. I think also in how thought leadership was conveyed for the companies that I was using the tools of, like an Attentive, like a Klaviyo, etc. And so I've sat in the marketer's seat of that, and then transitioning over to had the opportunity to join a company called Tone. It's a conversational SMS platform. I got that job actually from LinkedIn, just from sharing a lot of thought leadership about SMS marketing, sharing my views about the space, and just started to build up a kind of a following and audience in the SMS marketing community. So came to Tone. We were acquired by Attentive, the largest company in the SMS space, like within a few months of me being there, which was just a wild experience going from seed funded company to like a series D or E at the time, Attentive. So when I came to Attentive, I was sort of the face of the partner ecosystem that we were building. So I was on the road, going to events, speaking, doing a lot of marketing, but not without realizing it, honestly. So a lot of what I was doing was more education focused, working with our technology and agency partners. And sort of from those two experiences, direct-to-consumer marketing and being at Attentive, I realized I really wanted to go and do marketing for real. I felt like I was building a lot, doing a lot of content and doing things that were marketing Attentive without me realizing it. So from there, I've done three tours of duty now as a marketing leader. Went off to Wonderment, which is a smaller Shopify app, Caro, and then most recently here at Digioh, where I've been for almost 2 years now, coming up on later this year. So yeah, it's been that's kind of like the few minute overview of how I got here. But a lot of what I believe is just SaaS marketing is going through a big pivot right now, and a lot of people who have user experience are having a little bit of an unfair advantage, I think, in how you could conduct great marketing at companies.
That's super interesting. Just before we dive into the 18 lessons, how similar or different is the e-com world to the SaaS world for you personally?
Oh man, it's totally different. I think there's two sides of the coin. SaaS marketers think that D2C marketing is very easy, and then D2C marketers think that SaaS marketing is very easy. So I will tell you, both are very hard. Both have their unique challenges and fun within it. I think there's some principles that always apply, like the 101s of marketing, if you will. But when you are caring about pipeline and the deal flow and how things move in SaaS marketing, it's a very different, it's much more delayed gratification. Whereas in D2C marketing, you can send an email and you can close sales, same day. So it's very different, but I enjoy both sides of it. And I feel like I have a little bit more of a passion, I would say, for SaaS marketing, even than I thought I would have when I was in the D2C side, I should say.
That's so interesting. You do strike me as the kind of guy that likes a challenge as well. But we've got obviously 18 lessons to dive into. So yeah, let's jump straight in. So lesson one, you say not to get too high or low on any one marketing channel, and there's no silver bullet. Could you just break this down a little bit, and what should marketers be doing instead?
Totally. Yeah. This is one that I've added to my kind of toolkit recently. I'm a big systems philosophy kind of guy, like a little bit, maybe cliche in that, but I feel like great systems is a really just the right way of thinking about, scaling marketing or anything within a SaaS organization. So these lessons are all kind of like in my little Bible, if you will, of marketing. But this one specifically, I've added recently, there's a dozen channels that any marketing team might be trying to run at any given time. And what I mean by not getting too high or too low on things is, a great example right now we're going through here, and as at the time of recording, is tariffs here, and the global economy, and it's changed a lot of how buyers are thinking about tools like a Digioh or any SaaS tool for that matter. So a lot of the acquisition channels that we're running right now are going through fluctuation. Some are higher, some are lower. So like a paid advertising channel, for example, we had a heck of a first quarter in paid advertising. Paid has been one of our biggest channels that I've kind of been able to help grow over the last 19, 20 months here. And so, we had a little bit of a setback, last month in paid, but what we saw, on top of that was events really carried the load for us, and events ended up being actually, we just did Grow LA last month, and Grow LA was the biggest event we've ever done from a pipeline perspective. Blew us out of the water on any expectations we had. But I say all this to go, when a channel like paid might, recede back a little bit, rather than saying, okay, we just need to back out of paid entirely. You have to kind of let the landscape kind of settle a little bit and look at, zoom out a little bit. Knowing your data can really help within this. But I think being too reactionary to, if that's even a word, being too reaction prone to, these smaller blips can really cause you to, suffer in the long term. So I think, if, a marketer is listening to this and thinking, hey, paid is down or SEO is down, we're going to stop doing that entirely, you might miss out on the opportunity when that picks back up, or might just be a small blip. So I think it's really important to have a lot of diversification, but also being able to be really good at temperament. It's similar to investing as well, right? I mean, when the market's super down, if you sell off and do everything, you might miss when the things kind of rebound there. So I think it's really important to not get too high or too low on any one channel. And also too, even on the other side of this, a great example of a channel that's changed a lot has been SEO. AI has changed everything with how people think about SEO right now. And so, with that right there, if you had your whole strategy bet on Google search, and now suddenly ChatGPT and Perplexity is recommending everything, and you're lost in the sauce, you might be, kind of crap out of luck, if, so to speak, if you didn't have other channels that were running in the same time. So it's just important to stay diversified, not to get too high, not too low. Those are things that I think can really help kind of stave off peaks and troughs, if you will.
Awesome. No, thank you for clarifying all of that. So let's jump into lesson 2. You say there's no such thing as a perfect funnel, and that done is better than perfect. How can we apply this mindset to day-to-day marketing, and should we still aim for perfect?
Totally. Yeah. Perfect is, it exists in a textbook. It doesn't exist in actuality. I really believe that. And when I say done is better than perfect, I came to Digioh, in 2023, really at a time in which the founders of Digioh had built an amazing go-to-market effort. We were a reseller-focused business, but we weren't really thinking about direct marketing. So people who were using Digioh were typically buying it through an email platform that they might have been using, like an Iterable or a Braze. But this idea of direct marketing really had only been going for a few months before I was even starting here and building that out. So the marketing funnel in its kind of infancy was very elementary, if you will. We had a lot of things that we needed to get off the ground. We needed to get content moving. We needed to get email marketing moving. We needed to rethink our paid ads. Like, everything had to be kind of built up. But had I spent the first 6 to 12 months of my time here leading marketing, saying we're going to build the perfect funnel, I might not have had time to be able to get all that done. I might have been fired before I even hit month number 6 if I couldn't, deliver results. And so getting out of the way of like perfect and getting something out the door, you're going to get feedback in real time. All the platforms that we use, a HubSpot, whatever CRM you're using, can give you all this insights in real time. And so you just want to be able to get, hey, if I can get my demo form up and I can get, some ability to track intent on the site and, follow up and have ads moving, and like you can get a lot of the way, further, I would say, than trying to be, oh, it has to be perfect, and then we're going to press live, and then you just get so much more insight in real time. And then I think one of the other things that's really fascinating about marketing is like nobody follows the funnel path that you think they will. You can build this like 15 step, everyone's going to touch the first thing and then this and then that. But like, there's like the drawing. It's like, it looks like a 2-year-old drew it, lines everywhere. Like that's kind of the path that a lot of people take. It's like, they interact with the website and then they go do this and then they come back to it. So it's really like the way I kind of boil this all down is like, you just need to get the data in front of you and look at that, over the course of a few months. And you'll have a much better view, I think, of what your funnel should be. And that's always changing. I think our funnel from what we had in 2024 to 2025 has changed a lot. But had I been, looking at done is better than perfect, I think that is just the right way to think about a funnel for sure.
Oh, I love that. And do you know what I think about that mindset as well with marketing? Because you can be really good at short form and have a really high bar, but you could be really bad at long form, or you could be bad at YouTube. Mm-hmm. And if you have the same bar of quality, you won't ever get that first video long form out the door. So you almost need to accept that bar's going to be low, get it out, get data, test that newsletter idea. Okay, that's got engagement. Now we'll do YouTube. But you can't have the set. You can't go for perfect when you're new, like you're saying, when you're trying new marketing channels out and things like that. So get the data. Love that.
And I think
love that.
To kind of just say to piggyback on that a second is like there is kind of an MVP emphasis that I think a lot of what I do with my team is like, what can we get out in the next couple of days to just test and prove, will this work or will this not? You mentioned short form video content. Like we tested short form at Wonderment for quite some time. We had a lot of viral videos actually that happened from just YouTube Shorts. And had I focused on long form, we might have gotten no views and no impact to be able to tell us. So it's like, you just have to get something out the door a lot of times to be able to figure out, like, is there legs for something? Quality and, brand standard is one thing, but I think there's always ways. And with the advent of AI tools now, it's even quicker to be able to test and figure out, will something work? Should we even invest more time or resources into this?
I love that. I'm going to use that phrase now. Is there legs? Is there legs here? Yes or no? If no, move. I love that.
Love it.
That's great. Let's move on to lesson 3. There's so many lessons we've got to talk about. So lesson 3, get outside your 4 walls. What's one example where taking a step outside, a conversation, an event, a sales call, led to something that you would call a thing?
Totally. I think, one of the things that happens at SaaS marketing specifically is we kind of live in echo chambers. We think everything is like really concrete. When we create the marketing funnel or the website copy or whatever, we think that that's just understood easily by everyone. But one of the things that we really learned over the last kind of 6 to 12 months, Digioh, we offer a ton of tools. We're a zero-party data and CRO platform, but we offer quizzes, pop-ups, preference centers, surveys, all the gambit of things. And so we've always had to figure out, how do we box that up and take it to market in a way that's easily understood? And so getting feedback has been really important from the market. And that message has changed and evolved a lot over the course of the time I've been here. But events and talking to our customers has been one of the most foundational pieces of feedback that I've been able to get and then action on. So, even this year, we've done 2 events with one of my favorite customers. His name's Harry Roth. He's a director of e-com and CRO at AS Beauty. And I've done a couple chats with Harry now, fireside chats at events, to an audience. And like Harry and I have been able to workshop a lot of like what Digioh does. And we're pushing this zero-party data narrative a lot right now here at Digioh. And so we've been able to have content sessions all about that, dive in, see what resonates with, dozens, if not hundreds of people, and figure out from that, okay, how do we take that back, that content, that message, what resonated, what didn't, and then let's take that back to the website. Let's take that back to, our playbook that we've got here, that we'll talk about this, I think, in a little bit. So it to me, like talking to people about what it is that you do is one of the most important things that you can be doing, whether that's with a customer or pitching, like going to a happy hour event and give 12 different pitches to 12 different people and see what stuck out the most. I feel like that just talking to people, we don't do that enough, especially in this remote first environment that we have.
It's amazing how a lot of this is just talking. Like you can come up with all the theories in your head of mapping everything out and how it works, but until you talk to someone and verbalize it and get their take, and it being customers telling you what they actually want, it's just so valuable, isn't it? Almost like the more conversations we have, the more we learn as well. If we can then like look back and pick out that bit's valuable, that bit's not. But yeah, such a big lesson. Fantastic. This next one, lesson number 4. Work with what you've got instead of always looking for more budget or hires. How do you apply this in practice? Is this tied to full utilization, training, and that sort of thing before looking for more? How do you go about this sort of stuff?
Yeah, this is one that so Digioh is a bootstrapped business. This is the first company I've been at where we've been bootstrapped. And it's given me a much different perspective on how I think about spending money here. And that's from programmatic spend, but also like headcount spend. And so I think I take this from multiple angles. Like for us, we sit in a space where we're peer companies to venture-backed companies, having millions and millions of dollars in their war chests, and for us, we see that and they've got 30-person marketing teams, or they're doing the $1 million+ customer event that they just did. And there's very much like the keeping up with the Joneses mentality of like, oh, we should do that. Like we should have an operations person full time. We should have a community, lead, those types of things. And like all of these are amazing ideas, but it's always like the catch of like conditions kind of apply to this, or like, this is sort of like, this isn't like this works for every company. So for us at Digioh, like one thing that I've really realized is like, kind of going back to done is better than perfect. We need to be able to take the resources that we have and make things happen. I think with the advent of, or the emergence of AI, with the emergence of, cheap distribution from social and content, and even just thinking about like the tools that we're already paying for, if you sort of box in the way you think about marketing, it can actually open up a lot of doors, because there is just too much choice and too much opportunity that you can kind of get paralysis, if you will, by looking at too many things. So I think for us, like, we do have a budget, we do spend money, we do all these things, right? But I'm also like, how do we get the most out of what we have before we start to look at, hey, like we need to go do that, or we need to, I can't do my job well because we don't have operations here right now, for example, those types of things. So I think it's when you take more pride in the things you have rather than what you don't have. I mean, this is even kind of meta philosophy type stuff too. You just figure out how to make it happen. And I think for us, like that's been, keeping the team leaner here, having more contractors here as opposed to full-time hires. And then I think the last thing as well, on budget and optimization of like things is like doing everything before you hire or go kind of figure out bringing in some other help for it. Because you might realize that like that wasn't the thing that you should have been doing, or you could actually do that and automate that task. You didn't actually need to invest further in that. So yeah, I think marketing has a slippery slope of spending too much if you can't kind of keep the the guardrails up, so to speak. So this one to me is super important, not just for marketing, but really kind of startups in general.
That's interesting, because obviously if you've got, I bet that's made you a better marketer. I'd love to know if you think that's made you a better marketer working obviously at a bootstrap. So I'm not sure about previous experience, whether you worked at bootstrap before, but if you've got unlimited amount of money to spend, you can just throw money at bets, and that one came in. But when you don't, you actually prioritization comes in. It's like, we've got this amount of money. What do we put money on? And then you actually feel the pain of that bucket didn't go so well. So what are we going to do with that? Like,
Yeah.
do you think it's made you a better marketer?
That's a great question. I think it has in every way, because it's it's kind of the stakeholder mentality, shareholder mentality. Spending the money that like it's yours, and I think that it's given me. I've always kind of approached marketing from more of a scrappy kind of a lens, and I think that it's just made me realize that like the things that make people buy software oftentimes isn't the big flashy spend. There are companies out here, and no knock to them. I love seeing it, but doing these, lavish events, renting out castles, doing things like that. And that's just like not, it doesn't often move the pipeline near as much as just being a good human being, having a good emphasis on content, the fundamentals of marketing. That stuff doesn't, software is so commoditized now and so, and the barrier to entry is so low on a lot of these that like you can do a lot of things with not a lot. So it's definitely given me a much more frugal lens, but I think in the right kind of context. I think that going to be at a bootstrap business is something I recommend everyone does at least once in their marketing journey.
I love that. I like how you're tying in like elements of yourself and your own philosophy, being a good human being, scrappy marketing. Like, I love this kind of all. There's a bit of you coming into this, a bit of your, yeah. It's quite cool. We're going to get onto some of those questions. I think they're some of the final questions, but brilliant. So lesson number 5. You talk about the power of 5-minute updates for building confidence in the marketing strategy and staying aligned. But focusing on the more alignment side, how much of a challenge has alignment been for you? And what else do you do to keep everyone on the same page?
Yeah, alignment is the probably number one job of any marketing leader at a SaaS company. It's why people get promoted. It's why people get fired. It's why people spin in circles, why companies pivot. Like, I mean, just without alignment on like marketing really goes first, I think, for most SaaS companies. So I think that it is important, for me, like that alignment kind of goes in a few ways. When I was, even before I had joined Digioh, I was consulting here. I knew the team a little bit. We were having conversations like, I'm bringing in kind of my kind of world of what I would do here. I'm a big visual person, so I had, like kind of Figma boards built out and kind of like, the whole sketch of like, here's the whole world of marketing at Digioh, and kind of being able to kind of position and pivot that, tell that story. We're always selling a story in marketing about what it is we're doing, what that stuff what we're doing is actually delivering from an impact perspective. And that's both externally, the results you drive, but also internally, the story of like what it is that you're building and the identity of the company. And so I think that like the identity of who we are, kind of mentioned a little bit ago, but like, just some of the stuff that we've faced with offering so much at Digioh and doing so much, who we are and how we talk about ourselves, it can be hard to be able to have a central kind of way of talking about Digioh, from our customer success team to our engineering team. So marketing is the glue of that. That also actually isn't, like even within the number one job of marketing oftentimes is to deliver pipeline. But I think an important kind of piece of that too is like the internal enablement as well, because oftentimes that role doesn't exist before, or it is assumed to be owned by marketing. So I think, all this to say, like alignment, yes, the 5-minute updates that I send every week, super impactful for telling the short-term story. But I take any chance I can get, whether it's Slack updates, whether it's at a company all hands meeting. Finding the common ground is the most important thing. So helping us to all talk about ourselves in the same way, but also marketing, it kind of sounds like French to a lot of people. We're talking, millions of metrics and things. And like, is that good? Is that bad? So like finding a way to be able to find common ground, describe it like you're 5 years old kind of mentality. Those are all things that build trust, but also build, I think, a stronger company culture as well. So we're still figuring out that Digioh. It's not perfect, that I want to preface that, but like it's a big focus of mine, is everyone needs to be understanding what marketing's job is and how we help everyone else in their day-to-day as well.
That's so interesting, because it's not just alignment within your marketing team, it's alignment across customer success, sales, and how it all ties together. And the cascade, like if you've got a marketing doc that has your marketing message and say your customer success, I don't know, the minute you hit publish or it's just there, it goes out of date, things evolve. So finding the right cascade as well of how do we do this with minimizing time wasted. You've got to manage the whole organization, not just marketing alignment. Very interesting.
Totally.
Awesome. This next one, I love this next one. Lesson number 6. So you budget using the 70/30 or 80/20 rule, with 70 to 80% going to near-term pipeline, which I found super interesting, by the way, because I had no idea how budgets were distributed in marketing companies, and 20 to 30% to long-tail bets like SEO, AI investments. How do you decide what goes in each bucket?
Yeah, this one has been a constant evolving one for me. Mike Volpe, former CMO of HubSpot, was one of my mentors over the last few years, helped me learn a lot about building a budget. And this was one, that when I was first learning how to build a budget, I didn't quite understand a lot of stuff. There's not a lot of like good resources out there on how to like build a budget, have confidence in your budget. There's like this whole, the way you just talk through how I think about it is, that 70/30 80/20 of, short and long term. But then there's also people who think about it more from 70 80% goes to demand, and then 20 to 30 goes to brand. So, there's kind of a couple of ways of thinking about that. But for me, like I sit down, probably October, November of the year prior. So I did this in 2024, kind of towards the middle end of Q4 for the year of 2025. We're already thinking about like how we can spend that budget. So for me, like, I've got kind of my pillars of what I know drives demand, whether that's paid advertising, whether that is conferences, whether that is partner marketing. Partner marketing is a huge, huge one for us at Digioh. We partner with platforms like Klaviyo, for example. So content that we want to do with them, webinars. And so what I'm kind of doing over, Q1 through Q4 of this year, when I'm looking at it, is what are the kind of big campaigns that we want to put forth? What budget do we need for those? What does my paid advertising look like? Are we ramping up? Are we staying static? How does that sort of play in? And from those, and this is just from experience of doing this a couple of times now, you kind of know what you'll expect, I suppose, from what are the things that are going to pad some of that as well. So conferences, we know we're going to get a big injection of pipeline from this. So, that whatever we're spending here is worthwhile. And you kind of have your sort of pillars, if you will, based upon that. And then some of the more experimental stuff, like an AI investment or doing SEO, bringing in an SEO contractor, whatever that stuff is, sort of placing that out. I think looking at that as more of a 6 to 12 month kind of horizon. So, hey, like we're going to go spend, 10% of our budget on SEO, and we know that SEO won't probably do anything for us from a demand perspective until Q3, but we're going to start it in Q1. So I think that like you have to be able to have a really good forecasting ability to be able to know, hey, if I'm spending 80% of my budget on conferences and paid advertising and content, I know that that's going to yield 90-day pipeline for me, or be able to realize that within 90 days of spending that money. Whereas some of the longer term bets, like, you probably will not see that until, later in the year. It's a lot like gardening, honestly, if I'm kind of finding a common analogy. It's like, like you've got stuff that like tomatoes that are going to grow super fast. And then you've got, apple trees that take years to be able to grow. So I think it's important to think about that a little bit more, because those are things that as a marketer, like you need to be able to give confidence to your sales team as well, of like, hey, this is where I'm going to be able to bring demos to you throughout the entire year. And it really is, one of the most important, I think, facets of a marketing leader is to be able to appropriately forecast. And it's not science. I mean, it's not perfect science either, I should say. You're going to be wrong on some things as well, but that's how you at least have a place of starting when you have a budget like this.
That's so interesting. So say if you map out your year and what you're going to spend things on, and then you go, okay, this one's an apple tree, this one should have bloomed, within a month or two. If it doesn't bloom, maybe ads, maybe for whatever reason, will you go, no, we've allocated that towards ads? Or will you go, actually, let's take a little bit, let's scale ads back a little bit and put that on events. We've got an event next month. Will you flex a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that is, I leave percent of my budget, and it kind of varies quarter over quarter, but to not allocate it initially. So I've got that flex spend. So, if something comes up, a great event comes up, or hey, like we suddenly notice that, Meta ads are crushing for us and we need to go spend more money. How do we do that? you can, yeah, definitely pull back from something if you haven't committed to. Or I think, having that flex budget can really help in those kind of situations. So I think there's kind of two ways of thinking about that. As a bootstrap company, I think about budgeting a little bit differently. Like for me, it's not use it or lose it, like some VC-backed companies will, which is kind of insane. That's where you get insane brand spend or things that just we don't do. So for me, it's like if I think I can get impact, I will spend it, and if not, let's roll it over. Let's figure out the best kind of use of this. But I think that's one of the fundamentals of a great marketing plan is it does change, it is flexible, but having at least a baseline to start your budget around can give you a lot of clarity around how you think the year will ramp up. But I will say, all this, take it with a grain of salt. Things can happen. Like, for us, great example this year has been tariffs and how that's weak. When we were talking in October about planning for this year, we could have never have imagined, some of the things that could happen there. So take it, but be prepared for it to all change as well. It kind of, it can kind of go both ways.
That's really interesting. I know we're spending a lot of time on lesson six, but lesson six really fascinated me when I read it. So, and you did touch on it about, other people see it as 70% on demand, 30% on brand. And I know you said you don't subscribe to that belief anymore, and that actually you should be spending on both. Yeah, I'd love to know a bit more.
Yeah, for sure. I think definitely meant that. I think it's for the way I've always thought about it is like if you're building, if you're trying to drive demand, you shouldn't sacrifice building brand, and if you're trying to build brand, you shouldn't sacrifice driving demand. I think it goes both ways, and I think that when because we're a bootstrap business, think about spending our money, we have to check both boxes. Like I don't set aside, hey, we're going to go spend 25% of our budget this year on billboard advertising and running things in Times Square and having the big flashy things when people come in to Shop Talk and see us there and all that stuff. So like for me, like one of the best examples of doing that actually is this playbook that we built with Klaviyo. It's the e-commerce marketer's guide to zero-party data. I think we'll talk about this in a little bit, but this is an injection of brand through great content, through great value propositions that we deliver with a platform like a Klaviyo, building a lot of trust and credibility along the way too. Like building a brand is something that everyone wants to be doing now in software. With how commoditized everything has become, you can build tools with AI in minutes and days now. It's insane. If you don't have brand, like what do you have? Honestly, like I think that's a really, really true thing, at least within how Digioh sits. And so like for us, like we want to make sure that we can, these playbooks have become such a big piece of the funnel for us, but it's also become a big way in which people have come to know Digioh as well and discover Digioh. So it kind of checks both boxes for us. And that's when I'm thinking about like campaigns, I'm always looking for, does it check both those boxes? Now there are like edge cases where we might, not be able to do both, but I feel like at least 90% of the decisions that we're making here have to check both. I think unless you're a publicly traded company, Series D, Series E company with tons of money, building brand for the sake of just building brand in today's market is just not good business. You need to be able to do both, I think. And I feel like it's never been easier to be able to do both, actually, with the tools that we have around us.
Awesome. Let's talk about the playbook. So, lesson 7: go deep where no one else is. And I imagine this ties a lot to being bootstrapped, having to get creative. Can you walk us through the example, how you came up with the idea, what's packed inside, how it ties to the lesson, and the benefits that the playbooks reap for you?
For sure. So this playbook has, I've always been a content first marketer. I think marketing is content is marketing, like another kind of like cliche thing to say. But, for us, like I've been doing playbooks, for a couple companies I've been at. And this one, we wanted to put something forward that was going to cement Digioh as a thought leader in the zero-party data kind of space. It's a growing problem space. Brands don't know how to talk to their customers. And so zero-party data is straight from their mouth. It's what they care about, what they want to be able to, get see more content around. They want, the products they're buying, the problems they're looking to solve, those types of things. So we have a lot of, education that we can put forth in the market around how zero-party data is a fix for that. And so, we initially, sat down to create this with Klaviyo. And it was just a digital asset. Hey, we're going to put this out from a webinar. We're going to do email marketing. We're going to have paid ads, organic discovery, all those things. But what I started to realize, I think back to my days as a D2C marketer, one of the things I resonated the most with was when companies would send me physical books. And I realized no one's been doing this for a couple of years now. It's kind of become like a boomer thing to have, I guess. And so I'm like, for me, the light bulb moment went off of go to the place or the channel where no one is. And that to me was print. No one printing books, no one sending books, no one has them at conferences. And so what we typically had seen with playbooks was a lot of me, a lot of surface level ideas, nothing really valuable. It's what did I just read? But for us, this is 56 pages of how to build funnels with zero-party data, how Klaviyo fits into that, how Digioh fits into that. So super valuable. I cannot take all the credit for writing this. We have an amazing marketer on our team. Her name is Marissa Sanford. She wrote this book. And so none of this would be possible without Marissa. But, I really, really our big ethos here was let's create something that people would pay money for, but let's give it away for free. Let's do it on print. We gave these away at Grow LA. We gave over 120 copies of these away. We're putting these sticky notes here for our funnel audit as well, which is another offer that we have at Digioh. So for us, it's just let's give us a ton of valuable insights and resources away for free. And this has been a big brand kind of campaign for us, but also huge for demand. We're seeing brands come through the funnel now who've consumed the playbook. They understand what we do. They understand what they want to build with Digioh. It's sort of become the front doorstep of Digioh. So I think, just for us, it checked every single box across what we wanted to do here on the go-to-market side.
I love that. I love how you brought some lessons from D2C side to SaaS to be different. So that's zigging when everyone else is zagging, or the other way around. But the thing that I've learned recently is, if it's valuable, that's all that and if you do something that's different and it's jam-packed with value, people will just be like, oh my God, you have to pick that copy up. And then they read it. And then did you get a reputation for being valuable? And coupled with the fact that no one else is doing the print, it's the value and the print go together to create this unique stamp. And that's such a good idea. I love that.
It's definitely, this has been a lot of work to get to this point for us. And so I feel it's been, we kind of go back to done is better than perfect. A lot of the feedback and testing that we've gotten along the way has been how do we continuously get better? And what do people want to see from us when we create a content asset? So it doesn't have to be a playbook. It doesn't have to be physical print for anyone thinking about how do they do it. It's what is the market telling you they want more of within your brand, within your industry niche, whatever. It just happened to be print for us and doing that. But I think being different is really the name of the game when it comes to standing out in a really competitive market.
That's it. And you've highlighted another point, which is, what works, ads might work for one business market, might not work for another, and comes back to customer conversations, which is one of the previous lessons about getting outside the four walls and what resonates, and print resonates in there. So it's all tying together in a spider web. But we've just got 15 minutes. I'll try and be respectful of your time. I think we can get through a few more questions. So lesson number 9, embrace AI like a team member. So I'd love to know at Digioh, how do you use AI? Is it more like an assistant, a consultant, an agent? And are there any specific examples that stand out?
Yeah, this has been one that has just exploded over the last kind of 3 to 6 months here. We treat AI like a team member here at Digioh. We use it every day in marketing, from content, brainstorming development, down to, demand generation activities, operations. It's truly insane. I think what you can, if you have an imagination and you figure out a prompt, you can build a lot with AI. we still write all of our content, with a human first approach. We still do things with the human first approach. But for us, it's like, how do we save time? How do we, ideate faster? And then maintain brand standards even too within tools, that we're using within AI. So we do have some custom things that we've built. We're continuing to build and test and iterate. And like, this is very much an experimental phase for us. But I really believe that everyone kind of initially was like, AI is going to replace humans. I don't think that's true. I think AI will replace people who are resistant to AI. And so I think that the more that you can figure out how to use AI in your day to day, marketing teams will be leaner. I think businesses might end up being leaner as a result. But I do think that, for us, like AI has been just a great resource for us to tap into to make sure that we're just putting brand standards forth and making sure that we're creating consistent, I would say, marketing over time as well. So cannot recommend anyone do this enough, honestly.
Yeah, I think on an employee level as well, it's like people are gonna start going, right, we need to start, skilling up now and understanding what I do on a weekly basis, the ROI that generates to a business. Like, I think it's going to help. People are going to skill up and do more on a long-term view. I just think, short-term view, it's probably going to be difficult. But yeah, so lesson number 10 then: contractors plus lean full-time employees plus AI equals a modern team. What's your current mix between FTEs, contractors, and what's the logic behind the setup?
Yeah, this has been another one I mentioned earlier, like work every role in the marketing team before you hire for it or do anything. I think it gives a much more boots on the ground, much more respect for like the function, but also figuring out what you do and don't want. So I've worn every hat here at Digioh before I've hired for it. That was kind of my choice in design, but we have a team of 5 plus AI, which I guess you could say probably does the job of like 3 to 5 other people. So we have only one full-time marketer besides myself, and we have 3 contractors that we work with. Myself, Marissa, who is our senior growth marketing manager, but really Marissa does a lot as well. Marissa's doing product marketing, she's doing content and SEO. And she's also doing a lot of, I guess, our partner marketing as well, on top of, several other things that, don't even fall under that umbrella. But we sort of have, myself and Marissa as very versatile, we do a lot of things type marketers. And then contractors on the demand generation and paid ad side, we have a Webflow developer and designer. And then we also have an SEO agency as well. And we brought in some others kind of come and go, not really full-time contractor type setup there. But for us, like, that's sort of gotten us, to where we are. We've grown 85% year over year from close one revenue through marketing. 2023, 2024, we're on pace to beat that this year. So I think for us, like, the model has worked, but I know that like what we're now figuring out is like, we know we need to add another marketer here as well, open up another seat or 2. So we've been improving and stress testing and making sure we can sustain growth before we bring in more people. I think bloated marketing teams kills your acquisition costs, and it also can be really dangerous to a company's overhead. So I think the less is more approaches work for us, and I think that it's something I recommend a lot of people lean into. Is you can get a lot done with contractors if you have the right people around you.
Cool. So next question, lesson 13, content is the foundation, but with barriers to entry being 0 and content volume going up, do you think content will still be king for SaaS in 2026 and beyond?
This is a great question. I was thinking about this one, kind of looking over the notes. I think it's twofold right now. Like you mentioned, like the barrier to entry is so low. AI is creating content at a clip that is just like unimaginable for people to think of, even 10 years ago. But I think what's going to continue to stay constant is human assisted content, or human written content will always be performing. I think that like what I'm seeing more and more now is that like if you can have good templates and frameworks of, you put in the effort to have, this is how we want to write a blog post, this is how we want to do our social, our email, and then you can help AI to guide and kind of look and maintain your own brand standards. Like that's a much better way to think about content with AI than write me an email with, no context or kind of example. So I think it is changing and evolving for sure. But I think one of the very interesting things that I'm keeping my eye on here is like, I think the way in which we use our brains is changing a lot with AI, and we're having AI do a lot of the critical thinking for us. I've seen it a lot where people are like putting in a blog post to AI and saying, distill this down and give me the key takeaways. So being able to optimize your content for AI, whether that's for skimming, for search, those are things that we're thinking and working through right now at Digioh is like, we need to be really good at those types of things. But I do think that content is still the most important thing that anyone can be doing, because content to me is still the great kind of mediator of the brand and demand conversation, because you still can do both through content. So I'm keeping my eye on how AI continues to evolve for sure, and how it'll change people's consumption of content. Maybe the medium changes, but I don't think that content will go away anytime soon as the most important thing in marketing.
And it just comes back to something earlier you said, which is, just not being resistant to the change. Like, as long as you have that growth mindset and evolve, it still requires work. It's just a different kind of work. Brand guidelines, put it into ChatGPT, then review it. Like, there's still effort. It's just a different kind of effort. So that's interesting. So lesson 16, be interesting. What's your process to stay interesting? I guess as a person, as a marketer, how do you balance being interesting with being contrarian, with being your authentic self?
This one is really, really critical to, I just think, like building marketing that cuts through noise. Having an opinion about the space that you sit in, whatever, if you sell tax insurance software or you're slinging zero-party data on CRO platforms like Digioh is, there's a unique point of view you can have in the space. There's pain that your buyers resonate with. There's problems that you're looking to solve. Like, I just think a lot of times, like, you can look at 5 websites and you can see who's playing it safe and who's not. And I think the people who aren't playing it safe typically take up more market share. They're typically creating things that, someone remembers, more than 5 minutes after they've seen it, those types of kind of things. And so it's just having a unique point of view can go really far. Like for us, like we believe that, like, for us at Digioh, it's like D2C marketing can be personalized at scale. And we think that the way to do that is through zero-party data. And so we're helping to solve that problem. And so I think that everything we do in content and our messaging and our marketing, like, all is aimed at helping solve the pain that brands are feeling and why they look to a tool like a Digioh. So I think having a unique point of view there is super, super important. And that radiates from, like, what your messaging and your website says down to your social posts as well. I think, like, every touch point matters, and this is why brand standards are super important, I think, as well. So I think there's an element of, like, having an opinion, being contrarian, I think a little bit, going against the grain, just a couple percent, I think is important. I don't think, like, being a full-on cowboy is, like, the right thing to do. Colin, we've seen that kind of unfold a lot in our space pretty poorly. But I do think that, like, you point to the likes of an Attentive, for example, or a Klaviyo, two of the biggest platforms in the space that we operate in. They have a really good brand because they've been able to reflect a point of view on the space. And you can do that as, a 1-person company or a 5,000-person company. I think it just really comes down to, like, being consistent across that. So to me, like, this one supersedes just marketing. This is how you think about product development, how you think about your sales process. Everything kind of comes through as well. And this kind of comes back even, I think, to the thing that we mentioned earlier around alignment, another really important piece to that as well.
I wish I could ask a follow-up question on this, because it's just sparked so many ideas, because you mentioned consistency. And when you're running a small business, consistency is just being yourself and owning up to your flaws and putting them all out in public. But you've got an organization. So I guess there's authenticity, but there's going to be people having slightly different values within the organization, and you've got to align them. And how you balance that, like them all singing to the same hymn sheet, that is a whole different ball game. But I won't go into it here, but I'd love to ask you a question in the future on that one. Fantastic. So lesson 18, don't take yourself too seriously. Why does that matter in marketing leadership, and how has this helped you and the team at Digioh?
Yeah, this one to me, a couple things come to mind. Marketing is really hard. I think everything and SaaS can be hard. Can also be really easy too. Like there's highs and lows, right? And, like, I think one of the things that I always look at is like, none of us are saving lives typically. Like this stuff is typically bought to just fulfill a need that someone has, but it's not saving lives. We're not doctors. We're not, rocket scientists. We're just selling software. And so like for us, like we like to have a little bit of human, aspects to our marketing. We like to make sure we're, being personable. But we're also having lots of laughs, I think, along the way. So like that's internally with my team, like that's, at conferences, like we're showing up and we're just, being real people and not being too pushy about, hey, buy Digioh. It's like, hey, like let's just get to know each other and see if there's a good fit. Like that's truly all that we think about with the sales process, down to the way that we talk about the product. So I think we don't take ourselves too seriously. We like to also just think about this as well as like being consistent every day, and doing the things that matter, but not kind of killing yourself over things as well. So it's a marathon, not a sprint. Really cliche thing to say, but I think it's important to just put forth also the idea of like, when you get into a good rhythm of like having marketing systems and beliefs and operations, it really helps you just to focus on the things that matter and tune out a lot of the other noise as well. So don't take yourself too seriously can kind of mean multiple things, but I just think that is something it's taken me a couple of years to learn this one, but I think this one to me really, really foundational. Again, not just for marketing, but for the whole SaaS organization as well.
That is so interesting. Yeah, you mentioned about where your focus goes and having a long-term approach. And it's funny that it's when you focus on the 2% and you prioritize the 2% in market over the 98% as a small business, speaking of a small business, you end up focusing on that. And then what follows is pressure tactics, unethical set, all that. But if you focus on the 98% and adding value, I'm here to add value. Here you go. Here you go. I'm just here to build relationships. I'm here to serve. And then you come across someone who's in market. You're like, oh, wow, that's a bonus. Let me see if they need help. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. I'll recommend this person. All because you prioritize 98% over 2% or instead of the other way around. But you're not saying one or the other. You're just saying which one we put our energy into, long term or short term. But anyway, I love that. I completely align on everything you just said. But and yeah, just a final quick question, Blake. Where can people find more about you and Digioh?
For sure. Best way to get in touch with me, just at LinkedIn, Blake Imperl. Super easy to find there. Just send me a connect request, send me a message. I'm happy to help and chat however I can. I'm just really, really open to paying it forward however I can to the community. And then if you want to learn more about Digioh, see some of the marketing stuff we're building, etc., just www.digioh.com, digioh.com. You can find us over there as well.
Awesome. And I'll put the links in the description. Obviously going to wrap up now. Thank you so much, Blake. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. Fountain of knowledge, loads of experience. I think it's going to be a great one for SaaS and B2B marketers. And yeah, excited to see what's next for you and wishing you all the best.
Thanks. I super appreciate it.